Hello, welcome to another episode of the Dans. It's been a pretty crazy 24 hours here at the Capitol. The session is already proceeding under health restrictions with most of the work happening online. But last night we got word of the first positive cases at the Roundhouse during the session, one of which is a lawmaker. But the situation has been unfolding quickly. Dan, what's sort of the latest on whether this might affect or disrupt the session going forward?
Yeah, we're still finding out more details. As you mentioned, the House Republican Caucus announced that one of its members has tested positive. Today, we've learned probably the other individuals who tested positive were staffers with the legislature of some sort. Democratic leadership is saying that they don't see any reason to delay the session, that work still needs to be done, and they plan to forge ahead. Republicans have raised questions about maybe pausing it and resuming at a later date, but it doesn't seem like that's the plan. There was at least one committee meeting canceled today, but others were still meeting remotely. One thing that we will see is even kind of, I think, more of a tightening of some of these COVID-safe practices that you mentioned, including limiting how many people can be on the floor, on the House floor, and also closing committee members. Some legislators had been participating in committee meetings remotely, but in Roundhouse committee offices.
Yeah, it sounds like there are going to be some changes. There will be pretty strict limits on who is allowed to be on the floor. The House has already enacted some rules that require electronic participation. So even legislators who previously wanted to come onto the floor, they still would have to speak through their computer devices, through the Zoom web conferencing program. So we'll have to see how this plays out. The committee that was canceled today was House Appropriations and Finance. That's an important committee early in the session, especially because the budget starts on the House side. But as far as we know, things are proceeding and work is getting done today, mostly online. What sorts of progress did you see on bills this week? What kind of action did you follow?
Yeah, it's the second week of the session this week, so we really did start to see some bills moving through committees. One piece of legislation I covered is kind of a new pandemic relief package. It seems to have bipartisan support, and it would give some kind of financial relief to restaurants and other businesses, and also kind of rebate checks to low-income workers. That's one. It seems like there's some appetite to move quickly, but all sorts of other legislation started moving ahead too through the committee process, and we'll probably maybe move a little bit slower, but there's certainly some substantive bills that we saw start to move this week. There's a bill dealing with abortion that's very controversial that passed its first committee hearings in both the House and the Senate, as well as a few other measures that I think you wrote about.
Yeah, so another medical bill moving forward is a proposal to allow doctors to prescribe medicine to end someone's life. And it's it's a bill that has come up repeatedly in past sessions, but there is renewed hope on the part of the supporters that it will pass this year, given the changes in composition of the legislature. But it's one of the most emotional bills every year. Today, legislators heard from family members speaking about watching loved ones struggle at the end of their life, and wishing they had an option to get a prescription to basically go to sleep and end their lives that way. The opposition has focused on whether there would be adequate protections for people to ensure no one is pressured into this decision, to make sure that no provider has to participate if they don't want to. So a lot of the debate has focused on those safeguards. We'll see how that one develops. There are also other bills moving forward. There's a Civil Rights Act that has turned into a pretty intense debate over finances and the financial impact on cities and counties. That bill cleared its first committee and is moving on. So we're seeing a lot of important legislation sort of get its start and start its journey, but nothing has has reached the full Senate or full House at this point for action. Looking ahead, what are some of the issues you see maybe taking shape a little more next week?
Yeah, I think looking ahead, one thing we're keeping an eye out for next week, expecting to see at least one bill, maybe multiple bills introduced about legalizing recreational cannabis. That's obviously a high-profile issue and one that Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham supports. There could be a few competing proposals on how to accomplish that. So that's one thing we expect to see next week. There'll be more committee hearings certainly going into the coming week. I think we're all still kind of trying to get used to this Zoom format. We jokingly talked this week about needing to unmute yourself being kind of the catchphrase of the session. So I think folks are kind of trying to make that work and let the public testify. It seems like maybe they're working some kinks out of the system, but I think that's also something we'll be attuned to, just how kind of different and how unique this year's session is.
Yeah, it certainly, I think, we have a little bit of a somber mood this morning just because there's been so much debate about people who have contracted COVID at the Roundhouse and how that might impact the operations. So we'll have to see how it goes. The Speaker of the House has made it pretty clear he's happy with the Zoom format and being able to take committee testimony. I think it has been difficult for some people to get the hang of. Certainly, it's difficult for us to get the hang of. You can't just walk around the Roundhouse and see where people are going or run into people, and that is just such a different environment for us to be watching these. I think also we need to watch carefully to see whether these committees are getting adequate public comment. There have been some complaints about whether the committees are adequately notifying people of how to weigh in, how to click on the Zoom link, where to email their comments, that kind of thing. But we'll keep a close eye on that. Thanks again, everyone, for following our work. We appreciate always anyone who subscribes to the newspaper or follows us on social media, clicks on our site, on our stories on the website. Thank you for your support, and I'll let Dan number one have the last word.
Yeah, no, thanks for following our coverage. We are, hustling to try to bring everyone the news, and we'll continue to bring socially distanced coverage from the Roundhouse next week.